Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Wayne and Steve podcast with Talking Pools. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's a little bit timely of recent. I don't know how many of you out there have read about the electrical issue, accident that happened in, I think it's Logansport, Indiana, about a week or so ago, where it was a residential pool, and for whatever particular reason, depending upon what news story you read, happened, it got shorted and an electric current went through the water. There were 5 people injured, 2 seriously. Nobody died, knock on wood, thank God. But still, it poses an issue with electrical safety. And a lot of, Steve, I think a lot of service technicians really don't, or not only service technicians, but also customers, don't understand the electrical part of dealing with a pool. It's not just water and chemicals, it's other stuff. And with your background, I think that we can talk a lot about electrical safety, not only in residential pools, but commercial pools too. How critical and important it is to make sure it's safe for the users. So Steve, I'm going to pass the baton over to you for a while and get your viewpoint and ideas and suggestions, and maybe even a couple stories if you got any in there.
Yeah, thanks for introducing that, Wayne. It's obviously a big story. Anytime anything happens like that in the States, it's going to be a big deal, especially because of all the laws that we have here, right? And I think one of the main laws that we have for the swimming pool is the bonding and grounding, and we've kind of stolen that from the National Electric Code. So it's not just swimming pools that this falls under. This also falls under GFCI outlets, right? Any outlet that you might have outside. So if it winds up getting wet, it basically has like a kill switch on it, right? So it's going to turn itself off and, not get all the way to the breaker where someone could get electrocuted, and now you're getting high voltage and stuff like that. And it's the same thing with most things, but a lot of people just don't understand what bonding and grounding, we say it all of the time, but what does bonding and grounding actually mean, right? Mm-hmm. So bonding is the electrical connection of all the exposed metal items that are basically not designed to carry electricity in the pool or in a room or in a building or anything like that, right? Mm-hmm. So all of those are connected together in what you would think of like a circulatory system of the pool. Like it's a vacuum system, right? Think of your body. It's the circulation system of your body. It's the same thing. Think of bonding like that. Like everything is all bonded together, and that's why at the electrical or at the equipment pad, anything that's metal or is going to hold electricity. So like your pump, your heater, even like the old stainless steel filters. If you have an old stainless steel filter, that needs to be bonded and grounded as well. And basically, they're all going to be connected by this number 8 gauge copper wire. And in some of the states, it needs to be sheathed in green. In some of the states, it says that it needs to be bare copper wire. So it just depends, obviously you're going to have to look up your local regulations, but it doesn't really matter. Just because it's sheathed in green or it's a bare copper wire, they're still doing the same thing. It's just conducting that electricity, and it's basically taking it to the ground or to like a dummy system. And the whole reason for that, and we'll get into the lights and stuff too, but we got to kind of, prepare this up a little bit, right? Because you got to start from the beginning. So when everything is bonded together, you'll see these wires, and basically the wire is going to be connected to this little piece of metal that's designed to hold this piece of copper against the pieces of metal. And I definitely have touched inadvertently with like my leg before, where I was going to like undo something and I touched the pump with my leg and I got electrocuted. So that's happened before. And then grounding, okay, that's the attachment of the bonding system to the earth. And what they mean by the earth is you're going to have this more or less this piece of rebar that's coming from the ground and is attached to the whole grid of the pool. And that also includes the ladders, and it also includes the lights, right? And how do you test for this? Like, they do have testers. So they have these little things that you can actually put into the water, and it will tell you if there's any conductivity coming from the pool itself.
The mobile WaterLink Spin Touch allows pool and spa professionals the ability to test water in the field. A patented WaterLink Spin reagent disc is used with the innovative photometer to measure 10 different tests in just 60 seconds. That's right, just 60 seconds, and you'll have results displayed simultaneously on the photometer's touchscreen. That's not all. You also have the ability to send the data through Bluetooth into a smartphone or a tablet device. The photometer can measure free chlorine, bromine, total chlorine, combined chlorine, pH, alkalinity, hardness, cyanuric acid, copper, iron, phosphate, borate, biguanide shock, and salt. The water analysis can be proactive since they are able to measure all of these important tests and recommend correct procedures to fix their water chemistry issues when using our WaterLink Solutions Pro software program. It allows pool and spa analysts the best way to achieve precise results. So simple, anyone can use it. This is the most advanced system for precise use of wet chemistry methods ever produced. Pool and spa analysts can achieve precision without time-consuming tests or cleanup procedures. This groundbreaking analysis system is so simple, no vials to fill, no prep time, no guessing. To learn more about this innovative lab, visit www.waterlinkspintouch.com. Again, www.waterlinkspintouch.com.
So they have these little things that you can actually put into the water, and it will tell you if there's any conductivity coming from the pool itself, right? So it's going to tell you if it's giving off a stray current. And there are currents of electricity that you can't feel. So I don't know if you've ever seen that TikTok video or the Facebook video where, you know, someone grounds puts one of the manometer or the voltmeter, they put it into the ground, and then they're standing on the concrete, and they're not giving off any, stray electrical currents. And then they step onto the grass, and all of a sudden, like the earth, because you're touching the earth, like you're conducting some gravity, or not gravity, you're conducting some electricity to you, but you have gravity as well too. So you have some electricity that's actually going through your body, So we're spinning at a super fast rate.
I got a story for you before you
go
continue.
for it.
Sometimes when I talk to seminars and when I teach CPO, when I talk about this particular topic, I relate the story of a service guy I know over here in Maryland. He said the way that I know that there's a stray current in the water is that, and this only really pertains to guys, is that as the guy stands in the shallow end, okay, and if little air bubbles start to appear on the hair on their legs, okay, that's a sign to get the hell out of the pool. Because the additional electrical current, the stray current, is creating essentially CO2, and those are little bubbles on your legs. And usually it's caused by like a leak behind the niche in the wall. Like, we'll get into that. But I tell people, I said, ladies, get a guy, throw him in the pool to see if there's a stray current. Look at the hair on his legs, and if it's there, get out. And that's a perfect signal to know that you've got an issue that you have to deal with.
Right. At that point, it might be too late at that point.
But
now that's around the pool we've been talking about, right? So we've been discussing the equipment pad, and we've been discussing around the pool with like the ladders and the lights. I'm not going to say it's like 100% of the time that this is going to happen, but the ways that you can get electrocuted in the water is obviously like the old horror movie bathtub scene, right? Where you throw in a toaster into the bathtub, or a hair dryer that goes into the bathtub. And again, like these are the simple things, right? Like that have nothing to do with swimming pools, but it still has to do with electrical safety, right? So any hair dryer that you buy, anything that gets plugged into an outlet is basically telling you. And when you look at a plug, right? So when you're going to plug something in, it will actually tell you, what's going on with it. So I'm just going to look at this plug this random plug that I just grabbed out of the wall, right? So you have these two leads that are going into the wall. If there's two of them, there's no ground, there's no ground wire to this, right? So if you have a third one, and I didn't know this until probably about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and one of the guys I worked with, he was taking a 3-prong whatever it was. We had like a pump or something like that, and it was 3-prong, but we had an extension cord and it only had 2. And he went to go plug them into each other. And I was like, whoa, what are you doing, And he was like, dude, this shit'll still work. He was like, and he plugged it in and he was like, that's just the grounding wire. He was like, that has, it's not, that little piece at the bottom isn't actually, conducting anything. So when you plug it in, he was like, you can still get it to work. He was like, obviously you just don't want to have it go in the water. And I was like, okey-doke. So, I mean, and that's the same, I've found, you can also rig heaters with alligator clips too, like the professional, you know what I mean? Like before, back in the day when I used to take classes with Jandy and Pentair, they used to give out alligator clips. Now they don't want you using them. Obviously, they want you using a voltmeter and following it the right way. But back when the safety systems, when it didn't give you an error readout code and say, hey, it's the flue sensor, or hey, it's the high limit switch, or now you go over to the thing and it literally tells you like, hey, this piece needs to be changed. It's like, it's not, I'm not saying it's easy now to work on heaters, but like compared to 15 years ago, Jesus, like it is so much easier now to work on stuff. So back in the day, you would have to say, okay, cool. You would take the pressure switch off and you'd put the 2 little alligator clips on there. And if it worked, it was the pressure switch, and you would just move the clip, one safety system to another and basically just jump it. Now, is that safe?
Steve, I knew guys who would take the 3-prong plugs and snap off the ground one.
Yeah. No, I mean, like that's what I mean. Like, and I would never allow my guys to do that. Like I was just like, wow, like I went to the truck and got a real extension cord and brought it back and was like, bro, like we don't need to do this, So, but taking it back to the pool, the only way that you can, and not the only way, but one of the only ways that you can get electrocuted is, from either the light of the pool or the builder didn't build with, bond and ground the pool itself. So there could be some electrical conductivity going like actually through the pool itself, especially if it's a concrete pool. But again, like the builders any builder that you meet is normally gonna, have the wherewithal to bond and ground, all of not only the equipment. I see the equipment not bonded and grounded quite frequently. I actually called my service manager and yelled at him yesterday. I went to a pool. They were like, oh, we have algae. So I was like, oh, I'm in the area. I'll come by. And I went by and I looked over at the pipe. Just, I always walk by the equipment pad to just see if anything's leaking or, PSI gauges are broken or whatever it may be, right? You just give it a little look-see. And there was no bonding and grounding wire. There was no bonding. There was just no bonding and grounding at all. There was no wires, and I called my service manager and I was like, dude, we've talked about this before. I was like, because I pay my guys really well, and they're expected to, if you got to go buy a bonding and grounding wire, like a grounding wire, you just go buy it, dude, you're going to get paid for it. There's no excuses to, cheap out on safety. And I start, not going off on him, but I start giving him a little lecture and he's like, bro, I don't think we installed that. And sure enough, I checked my records and my client was like, he's like, I can get it from this other company for like $450 less than you. And I was like, you know what, man, like go ahead and do it. Like I'm not going to hate on that. Like if you can get a better price and you can get somebody to do it and you're saying you're getting the same thing, he didn't get the same thing. He got some off-brand pump and it wasn't bonded and grounded properly. I went to the homeowner and I was basically like, hey, listen, I was like, I can do this for you. But I was like, that $450, less price should have included the, all of the equipment that he was changing to be bonded and grounded. And he was like, oh yeah, like I'll check on that. But again, it's one of those things, like if you're anything at the equipment pad isn't bonded or grounded, or if the light isn't working, basically that's one of the like 5 top things for safety, where if you have the health department come, they're actually going to lock your gate and throw away the key. And they're going to say, hey, you're not opening until this is fixed. And it's on par with missing your main drain, like literally just having a pipe with no drain on top of it. And like, you would never open your pool if you couldn't see the bottom or the main drain, or if you were missing a main drain or, something like that. So I can't tell you though, how many people have lights that don't work in their pool and they're like, oh, whatever, like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But because, the way that the light works is the light sits in this little niche, it's called, right? And behind the niche, it's got a cord, and the cord is usually like around the mic here. It's just wrapped around it a bunch of times, and then you kind of just stuff it back into the niche, right? And then it's kind of a pain in the ass, actually. I don't like doing it, but my guys are really good at it. Now there's like a clip on the bottom, so you have to like move it back and forth. And then you get the clip behind it, and then you line up the little one screw hole there. And again, like I can't tell you how many times the screw has been rusted. Like, you have to use stainless steel pieces of metal in the pool. Like we're using chlorine, we're using muriatic acid, we're using all these chemicals and stuff. So you can't cheap out on this electrical safety stuff. And again, if you're out there and your client's light doesn't work, you need to at least get out in front of it and send them an email and say, hey, you have an electrical safety, it's an electrical safety hazard to not have your light working in the pool. Have we found out yet what it was that was conducting the electricity? Was it the light in the pool, or do we not know yet?
I don't know yet. At least before we started recording today, I did a quick search again on the event, and they're still really, really vague about what happened.
They're usually pretty mum with this types of stuff, especially when there's children involved and whatnot.
Yeah.
Number one, they don't want to they don't really want to name the children, and then number two, they don't really want to they don't really want to say too much until they've done the investigation and they've kind of figured out.
Create a panic either.
Right. I mean, anytime something like this happens in America, they're definitely going to do a thorough investigation, and they're going to kind of figure out exactly, what happened before.
That I read that, and I know this is horribly not technical, the wire was bent, and that's what's saying caused it. Now, I know that's horribly vague. and you have no idea what they mean by that. But remember, these news reports are talking to a lot of people who really don't know or don't care or whatever. They just know that it happened. And I'm sure down the road we'll get exactly what happened, or it'll be in the industry magazines and whatnot about what happened. But again, and this kind of all falls back to Steve is teaching and education, and that's why the electrical portions of, say, the CPO class and Genesis and some of the other classes that are there are so critically important, because people don't understand it. And, they think, I have to be like a master electrician to get this. No, this is almost common sense kind of things. You learn a little bit on how to properly bond, how to properly ground, and then you're good to go. How do I find an issue? How do you fix a light in a niche? That kind of thing. How do you fix that, or how do you stop?
Yeah, I don't think that we're asking pool guys out there to be the electrical masters is really what it comes down to, and I think that's what Wayne is really trying to say here. I do feel like, I wasn't super mechanical before I got into this industry. Like, I wasn't super mechanical mind growing up. I was more of a sports person. And once I got into the industry, 20 years ago, I really started learning about this stuff, but I was really confused about why no one was really ever talking about it. Yeah. And no one was really ever talking about it because they didn't understand the difference. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the bonding and grounding thing, like sometimes it's confusing, like which one is bonding and which one is grounding. Mm-hmm. And, is it a bonding wire, or is it's actually called a grounding wire? Mm-hmm. And, when you say that the pump is, you really should say that the pump is grounded, meaning that saying that the pump is grounded means that it has the grounding wire on it. And saying that the pump is bonded means that it's bonded to the rest of the equipment and the rest of the pool, and, finishing off that, electrical circulation system, circular system, or whatever it may be.
And this goes for residential or commercial pools. It doesn't really matter, because it
doesn't matter whether it's residential or commercial. With this type of safety stuff, they're all going off of the same standards, more or less. There are weird things that they make you do in commercial pools. Like with commercial pools, I've seen some commercial pools where they have like 15 lights or 17 lights. Mm-hmm. And, what Jandy and Pentair and Hayward, what they started doing is they started doing these nicheless lights. Mm-hmm. And now they're lights that on new constructed pools, they go inside of a return outlet. So they
Okay.
make like 2 or 3 extra return outlets. And then it looks like a microphone. It looks like, and I'm just going to use my beard comb here, but it looks like it looks like a microphone that basically just goes into the wall. And then now this is the light piece here. Now, the great thing about those is that you can buy those in 12 volts.
Okay.
And that's not considered like low voltage, but the difference between high voltage, low voltage and high voltage is like low voltage is going to be like your 120s and your 220s, they would say. And then once you get into like all old school system buildings, like I take care of a school system in New Jersey. And every pump that we buy, we have to spend extra money because it's high voltage, which means it's 3-phase and it's 440, right? So there's 440. So everything is high volt. So they need to use these high voltage breakers and like if you get hit with 440 volts, like that's going to be, you could get seriously hurt. But, I use a bunch of robotic cleaners in my pool. And all of the robotic cleaners, a lot of people will say, hey, like, I'm concerned because it's attached to the wall. It's plugged into the wall. And, I have to explain to them that even though it has some electrical currents in there, it's only really pulling 12 volts. So it's, even if it were to be in the water, like nobody's getting killed per se with that. Maybe that's when like you get the bubbles and stuff like that. Now, obviously you don't want to, and there's just like silly things that you learn over time, right? Like how I've had it happen where my guys set up a pump and then, the cord's not long enough, but they didn't tie off the cord properly, So like when you're tying 2 extension cords together, usually what I'll do is I'll make like a little pretzel loop in between the 2 of them. And I'll, and then if we're leaving for the day, back in the day on the East Coast, it would rain, right? So we would have to actually I would wrap like a towel around it. And then I would put it in a plastic bag, and I would take the plastic bag and I would make sure that no water could get inside there if it was going to rain, or because sometimes you got to go drop pumps or different things like that where you got to go do work the day before and leave something on, right? Like as far as a pump or something like that. Now they actually make these cool things that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, and it's you just put the outlets together in there, and then it's a box. It's like a plastic box that waterproof box that closes over it, which is kind of cool. And that's one of the biggest
those, by the way. Yeah, because it's an above ground pool, and the electrical cord, the heavy duty cord, it wasn't long enough, so he needed 2, and he needed them to marry them, like you're talking about. And he found this thing at Home Depot, and he asked me about it, and I said, "Hey, that's perfect."
Yeah,
just don't raise it up off the ground a tad to be on the safe side. But
no, of course. But I mean, somebody became a millionaire off of that idea.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean? It was a really great idea. And I have a couple of them in, it's simple ideas like that I just went to one of my clients yesterday and I saw they had I had forgotten my timer on their water hose. And it's still there. And I was like, I can't take it back now, but basically they're like $5 or $10 pieces. So I didn't care about it, but I chuckled to myself because, we've solved the problem of, overfilling people's pools. Because that was, one of the biggest things in our commercial contracts. In most of your commercial contracts, if you have commercial contracts with hotels or bigger, conglomerate type hotel systems, they're going to make you sign off on a contract that says if you do any damage to anybody's rooms or equipment or stuff like that, and normally that falls under overflowing the pool, because you overflow the pool and now it floods out the lobby or it floods out one of the rooms or something like that. And that's when you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
But, with back to electrical safety, the big thing is this is an easy sale, for you guys. So it's something that, if you're not, and look, for me, pulling lights, I don't pull lights, my company pulls lights and I'll get my service manager or, one of my service managers to do that because they do it all of the time. But again, if you've never pulled a light before, there's a process to it, so first you have to take out the old light. and basically you're going to pull out this long string, of electrical cord that's coming out of there. And number one, is it long enough? So they sell these lights in 3 different lengths, right? So, or 4 different lengths, actually. They sell it in 50-foot length, 75-foot length, 100-foot length. And then I think in like 125 or 150 too. It depends on the company, but they'll go up to 150. So do you have, a long enough cord for that? And then you have to marry the cords together, right? So you pull out the one cord and then you basically pull the other cord back through. And now you can cut off whatever extra you have. This is super important, guys. If you pull in a new light, by law, the light has to be able to be worked on at the surface. So I can't tell you how many lights I've pulled and the thing won't go to the fucking surface. And you're sitting there with a light that's just half in the water and you can't get it up to the deck. So when you pull these lights and you put these new lights back in, you have to make sure, test it, see if it can go up all the way to the surface, and then you put it back in.
So what's the solution if something like that happens? You got to drain the water down to below that level?
At that point, you'd have to drain the water down. Sometimes you'll have to drain the water down too, but it just really depends on a case-by-case basis. I've also had it happen where, sometimes you have to use like a light wedge. So I've had to buy like an extra piece called the light wedge because it won't fit back in. So you can get it back in with a light wedge. And then there's also these like wire niches that you can buy, and they're different sizes, and they'll just go around it and they'll kind of just hold the light in there. But again, I've seen lights that were, no J-box. I've seen light, and with the light, like you're always sometimes it's hard to find, but there's gonna be like a dedicated box for the light itself. And usually it's like even with the light. So if the light's in the deep end of the pool, it's usually like back towards the, that part of the garden or where the backyard or whatever it may be. And what you're looking for is like these little posts that are coming out of the, like these little long posts that are coming out of the ground. And then there's going to be there's 2 posts coming out of the ground. And then there's going to be like a little box that like sits on top of it. And the box sits on top of it, and it should have like 4 screws on it that you can take off. And then those wires, that's where you're going to wind up pulling the light from and stuff. My guys use it's like a plumber's fishing rod. They call it like fishing rod, but basically it comes in like a circular thing, and you can pull out this like thin, long metal piece of wire. And you attach that wire to the the lines itself of the light, and then you can wind up, you can pull it back and forth. I've had guys do it by themselves. I have a few guys that can do it by themselves, but mostly it's a 2-man job. So, usually it falls under somewhere in like the 200 to 300, 200 to $400 range, that you're charging for labor and stuff. But again, most of the time you got to get in the pool. So, are you draining the pool down? What are you doing with that? But again, like the light also is a problem area for leaks too. So not only is it an electrical problem for the light, I would say like 60% of the leaks that we've found, when someone says, hey, we're leaking, I set up 3 bucket tests last week, and none of my clients were leaking. It's the summer, and they're like, man, like what's happening to all this water? Like, why are we adding water so much? And it's like, you live in Palos Verdes where it's today by us, we're only 10 miles from there, but it's 75 degrees here because I live at the beach, and over there it's 97 degrees, so the evaporation difference is definitely a lot different. So for you guys that don't know, and if you're new into the game or whatever, the bucket test is a free way for you to figure out whether your pool is leaking or not. And the way to do that is you buy a regular Home Depot bucket, or when you go to the shows, American Leak Detection will be there, and they'll give you buckets that actually have like a ruler on it and stuff, which is kind of cool. And then there's a new company out there that sells the mini bucket test. I've seen that at the show. It's just like a little long tube, and you fill that up with water, and it's got a weight at the bottom, and you just put it on the first step. And not all water is not going to evaporate at the same rate all over the world, but all the water in the same place should evaporate about the same. So at the pool, if you set up the bucket, and sometimes you'll have to put like a rock or a brick in the bucket or whatever, but I make the water inside. I make the water on the inside of the bucket, even as on the water as the outside of the bucket, right? And then usually I'll put tape. I'll put like electrical tape or duct tape on the inside and the outside. And I just make it so that anybody, I tell my clients, I'm like, you are a willing participant in there. This is like Burning Man, right? That's going on this week. You are a part of this. You are part of this experiment, And that's why I tell them, they're like, is your guy coming back? And I'm like, no, my guy's not coming back 3 days in a row to check the bucket. I'm like, in 24 hours, you send me a picture and we're going to take a look. And I'm going to ask you, is there more water missing outside of the bucket than inside the bucket? And if you're missing more water outside of the bucket than inside of the bucket, you got a problem, So now that's the easiest way. I usually check it at 24 and 48 hour intervals. And then that will give you a heads up of, hey, we do have a leak. And now, again, I do not do leak detection, but I have one company that does leak detection for me. All he does is leak detections. So I like those types of companies, because he can come in 2 to 3 hours figure out something that it would take me 6 to 7 hours to figure out, So I don't mind paying him the, whatever he's charging me and then upcharging a little bit and, kind of going from there.
And like you said, about around 60% of the leaks that are found are due to the niche being whatever.
It's just behind the light. And what winds up happening is 1 gallon of water weighs 8.33 pounds, right? So you have a bunch of weight holding this pool into the ground. And the light is kind of off, underneath the deck a little bit. So behind that, there could be shifting, or there could be underground water runoff, or different things like that. And what could wind up happening is that deck starts settling, and now the weight of that deck starts sitting onto the back of that niche. And let's be realistic. I mean, it's a plastic, little gray piece of electrical, a PVC that they have back there. So it's easy for it to snap or move or, start taking on water. So there's there. And then where else is the most common problem is right in the throat of the skimmer.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look, the skimmer box is obviously a rectangle, and this is the same thing winds up happening because the skimmer has that throat, right? So that long white piece that kind of goes, and that's what you would look into and see the shelf of and stuff. And that's where the weir kind of flaps back and forth and kind of hits that plastic piece. Right. So where the weir meets and where the throat meets the concrete, you need some sort of a filler, because that stuff is going to be, basically bonded, no pun intended, bonded together with some sort of like putty or something like that, or concrete. And they basically put them together. And then over time, because nothing is moving that pool when the water is in there, right? So the skimmer starts to wind up moving, and then it'll actually just open up like at like a 16th of an inch. And all of a sudden you'll be just losing thousands of gallons of water a day. So the easy way to do that is to turn your hat backwards, and you get on your hands and knees, and you look inside, and you just look at the bottom. And you just want to make sure that there's no cracks or, any openings or anything like that. And that's a super easy fix, because any pool guy could go to any of the distributors and buy the A and B putty. And you mix it together, and you stuff a couple balls in there, and move it around, and it winds up hardening, and bam, you're the savior of the day. And now you're doing minor leak detections. Again, like I'll tell people like, hey, I'm gonna fix this for you, and it's gonna cost a couple $100 or whatever. So, and the way that I sell leak detections, and not that I'm selling leak detections, but the way that I talk to my clients to make sure that they're educated about this is, the way that it works with my leak detection guy and me is I have him come out, and he's going to do the leak detection for X amount of dollars. And that really depends on where you live in the country and what you can get away with, and, not get away with, but like what the going rate is, right? Where like, people are doing leak detections in some parts of the country for like $200 to $400. But if you are in like really affluent areas, then people are doing like for $1,000. I think American leak detection falls somewhere in between those. So the main thing that you have to get your client on board with is, hey, a lot of the times we're going to do the leak detection, and we're going to figure out the problem for you. And bam, you're just going to owe me one price all in, maybe $50 or $100 more than I told you because I had to use some putty or whatever. Boom, done deal. Your pool is fixed. Okay, that's it. Now, if I come and I pressure test the lines and I find a leak under the ground, I'm going to find where it is for you. And then I'm going to give you a quote on how to fix that. So now you might get a quote for $2,500 or $3,500 to break up concrete and to fix that actual leak. A lot of people that I know that are leaking are just, they find that they get to that point and then they're like, yeah, but we don't want to spend the, $3,500 or whatever it is. So we're just going to leave it. We'd rather just pay for the water. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, we did all this, we got to this point and I told you that we were going to get to this point. And now that we're here, we're kind of just like, we're just going to wait on this, So it really just
depends. They don't fix themselves either.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many clients now that there's so many different types of clients that you have. And like I said, at the beginning, I had picked up like basically everybody, right? Because you just need the business, right? At the beginning, when I first started out here in California in 2015, I wanted everybody now. But now I have a lot of pools that like, I just had I have a problem pool. It's a 30,000 gallon pool. It only has 2 returns in the shallow end. And even though he has a sand filter that we backwash every week, it just doesn't make it through the week. I'm putting in like 3, 4. I think last month I put in over 20 pounds of Cal Hypo because every time we would come back, it would just be green again and the guy wouldn't say anything. So now it's been green for 3 days or whatever. So now we're always behind the 8 ball and always trying to get this pool back. And, and my client texted me and he was like, hey, Steve, like not for nothing. He was like, I spent over $150 in chemicals last month. And I understand and I respect that. It's just like you were my client from 4 years ago. So you're only paying 4 years ago prices, like my price, he's paying a price that my price went up. New clients are paying $30 more a week than this guy is paying, and that's a big deal, So now I go back to the drawing board and I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be worth keeping this client on, and it's that's the point where I'm getting with some of them that they came on so early and the price was so low, and I want to honor that, and I love the relationships that we have, and I love being able to keep a lot of these clients on for a long time, but every year you guys need to really do a cost analysis of is this enough money? Am I making enough money here? And the big disconnect for me here in Los Angeles is I would say that probably over 50% of the guys that do pools here in Southern California are single polers. And a single poler is a guy who he does it all. He's coming out to clean your pool. He's doing the service work. He's doing the installations. Like he ain't got nobody else for help. He's just him. Okay. I have a company where we have, I have a partner and I have 6 employees, that are also 1099s that also own their own companies. So technically they're subcontractors because we do it the way that we're supposed to here in California, which is tough. But, I need to pay those guys. So there's kind of like a middleman involved here, and people don't understand that, like, if I'm paying my guy, $15, $20 a pool, at the end of the month, like I'm paying over $100 for this pool. To actually take care of your pool. And now you start talking about chemicals and we're buying all the chemicals and stuff. And again, it's really hard to figure out the pricing of where you not only need to be, but where you need to stay at. And like, I didn't raise my prices for probably like 4 or 5 years. And then I raised them like $5 or whatever. And that was like a year or 2 ago. But it's at the point where I need to do it again. And like, I feel bad, but at the same time, like, it's like, should I feel bad for being in business and stuff like that? So it's one of those kind of catch-22 things of like, you always want to do the right thing for your clients, right? And you always I always tell my clients that the way that I look at your pool is, I'm going to, offer you stuff that I would do with the pool if it was my pool. And what I mean by that is like, if you have a pool out there and your client has a robotic pool cleaner or like a pool cleaner with a booster pump, I love both of those types of cleaners. I do not like the cleaners that go into the suction skimmer or the vacuum port. And the reason being is because now we're just stuffing dirt into this filter, and the filter is already working hard enough to keep the pool clean. It's got one job. So now we're overloading it. So with those 2 types of vacuums, if you have those 2 types of vacuums, which is a robotic vacuum or a, booster pump vacuum, and then you have a salt cell, it looks like your pool guy has been there every day, and that's the difference between like a lot of my clients. I'll come on a Friday and then on like a Tuesday, they're hitting me up every Tuesday and they're like, hey, the pool looks not so great, And I'm like, no shit, the pool looks not so great. Like it's the middle of the summer. The best one is one of my clients last week. He was like, man, he's like, I don't know what's going on with the pool. He's like, he was like, it was all good this week when we were using it. And I was like, oh, you were using it this week? And he's like, yeah, we turned on the heater and everything was fine 3 days ago. And, now it's green. And I'm like, dude, of course it's green. Of course it's green after you use the heater and, you kept the heater on for 3 days straight. And my guy was there 3 days ago. Like, we're only putting in enough, we're trying to put in enough chlorine to last the whole week, but also have it so your family can use the pool tomorrow, at the same time. So we're only shocking it up to 10 parts per million. And sometimes if there's algae or there's phosphates or whatever, the 10 parts per million is gone like super quick. I followed one of my guys yesterday to go out to that pool that had algae, and he shocked the pool with 2 gallons of liquid chlorine. It was a 20,000 gallon pool, so it should have brought it up to 10. Right. I came back the next day because there was a little bit of algae. Do you want to take a guess what the chlorine was at?
Oh, God.
0. You know what I mean? And like, I had to explain, I had to call my guy and be like, hey, like, this is a perfect example of a teaching moment here. And it was a new pool for him. I put him on a new route, and it was a painted pool. And sometimes at the bottom, when you start brushing the pool, the paint starts coming up and you can't see anything anymore. There was algae, and what he should have done is put the pool up to 30 parts per million. He should have added like 6 pounds of chlorine, but he only really added 2 gallons or 2 pounds of chlorine. Right. So I came back the next day and I was like, hey, now I need to add 3 extra gallons of chlorine here. And now you need to come check on it on Saturday. So I was like, do you see that now, because you just went there on a Wednesday, I just went there on a Thursday, and now you got to go there on a Saturday. Now we just went to this pool 3 times in 1 week, and now he didn't tell them that they had algae and he had added extra chemicals. So now it's like, I go back and it's like, now what do I charge them for? What do I do? And I hate going backwards. I love being in front of it and telling them, hey, you have algae, and this is what we did to remedy it. So, when you see that on the bill at the end of the month, you know what it is, that we added extra chemicals and we added algicide and all that stuff. And totally, I know that we've gotten off of the electrical safety, but totally sideways of it. I went to my distributor yesterday, and there was a nice lady from one of the like consulting / buying groups, and she was trying to sell me on her like silver algatrine or something like that. And she was like, have you ever used this stuff? And I was like, yeah, I use it for black algae, but I was like, most of my pools don't have black algae, so I haven't had to use it in a while. And we got to chatting, and she was like, hey, have you heard that? And this is not coming from my mouth, okay? But she said, have you heard that the EPA is banning sodium bromide in 2025? I know that we all went off and started Googling on it. And that was the funniest part, because she was like, I wanted to make sure that before I started telling them, because she had went to the EPA conference that she said was just in Phoenix or something. And she said at the executive level, they are trying to get sodium bromide. And I don't care about sodium bromide. It is a carcinogen, but it is in a lot of our products, like a lot of the algicides and a lot of the different, pool products that you're putting into the pool. So I was just like, what? I was like, I haven't heard that before. So I'm in line, and it's, it takes forever to get out of your distributor, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm Googling, and I can't. And that's when I hit you guys up in our Talking Pools group. We have a little Talking Pools, like a side group that we have on Facebook. So we talk about like topics and different things like that. And I asked everybody like, hey, is sodium bromide going to be illegal? And, basically we got no answer, saying that in Canada, they banned it, but they banned it in a sense of like, you can still use it on a case-by-case basis. And that's what I laugh about, because like single speed pumps have been banned in California since 2010. I see single speed pumps all the time. And again, there's jet pumps and there's waterfall pumps and there's stuff like that. So like, if the manufacturer can still manufacture those, and then I have guys here that will like drive to Nevada to go pick up like a pallet of Century single speed pumps, and they'll come back and they'll be like, you want one? And I'm like, are you giving me a warranty for that? And they're like, oh, there's no warranty on these, and I'm like, well, like, I'm not going to sell a pump to somebody and not have a warranty on it.
Right.
That's why I use the manufacturers. That's why I have good relationships. I just warranted a IC60 salt cell this week. And as long as you're documenting and doing the right things, and, I had one that I couldn't actually, I had an IC60 earlier this year that I had to not eat, but the client paid for it, but it actually almost blew up. Like, it was just too much head pressure on it. And it just like, the whole thing kind of just like, fizzled out. And I was like, oh my God. And I actually had,
yet another reason, everybody, California is the way California is.
Yeah, I mean, California is, on the forefront of most of this stuff with most of these laws where they, we're kind of the guinea pig and we say, okay, we're going to adopt this and we're going to see how it goes. But my point is there's just no enforcement, and like I said, one of the articles that I wrote for Aqua Magazine when I was back, when I was writing for Aqua was, what do you do? Like I said, like, should you be successful or, I forget what the name of the article was, but basically it was saying like, I feel bad because they're still selling at the distributor these single speed pumps and everybody's telling me they're illegal. So if the manufacturer is still making them and the distributor is still distributing them, how are you going to blame the pool guy who's the end user who's, trying to get their client a $300 option as opposed to a $1,900 option, is really what it comes down to with that. So again, like I try and do the right thing for my clients, and you should be doing the right thing for your clients, but also you want to, follow the laws as well too. But there's, it's kind of a laughing thing here in California because there's no enforcement. And after I wrote that article, the California actually, they wrote me and they said, hey, you can be part of the solution, and you can be part of the solution by name dropping those people that you were talking about in your article that are still installing single speed pumps. And I was like, okay, look, like you're not paying me to be the police here, and I'm not the police. So like what people are going to do with their business is what people is going to do with their business, but we're here to tell you guys that obviously that you should follow all the laws, and not only you should follow all the laws, you should educate not only your employees, but also your clients as well too. And this is the perfect time for you to say, hey, there was an electrical accident and you should read up on it. And, as it comes out, you should educate the customer on what happened. And you can say, hey, this happened because of the light. If it comes out that it's the light, you can say, hey, your light isn't working. And it's a really slim chance that this would happen. But, this could happen and we really should fix that light, and now they have super cool LED lights that can change to all these different colors and stuff. And in some of the states, you get rebates for them. Here in California, they give you rebates on heaters and on pumps right now. But in some of the states, they give you rebates on some lights and different things like that because they want you to change over from the halogen lights to the LED lights because a halogen bulb is obviously consuming a lot more energy than an LED light would because the LED light is basically just pulling from like a board. It's just like a computer chip board where it has these different, sequences that go off on it. But again, I think, like I said, you just want to follow the laws and you want to make sure that you're doing the right things. And, God forbid something happens to a pool that you did an inspection at, or you were the last pool professional on site. And I'm in a situation right now where I'm hired by a city and they want me to get all of their pools up and running. Okay. Which I've started doing for them, but they haven't committed to giving me the CPO contract yet. And my issue with that is now I'm handing over all of these pools to this city, this Board of Education. And, there's no CPO at a lot of these pools. This is when I said to you in the last episode, it's the school system that hadn't been using lifeguards for their swim meets for the last 20 years. So again, like my apprehension with that is pretty high because now once I'm done with all of these pools, I need to send them a certified letter saying basically, hey, I have completed all of my work. Anything that happens from here on out, whether it be electrical safety or swimming safety or anything like that, we are releasing liability back to you guys because we're finished with our job. Our scope of work is done. And luckily none of these pools have lights or anything like that. But again, all of these pools, we're not talking about 1, 2, 3 horsepower pumps. We're talking about 5, 10, 15 horsepower pumps where something goes wrong. And I actually had one of the pump rooms flood out and they had to buy a new pump and the pump was about $10,000, and that's just what they go for, just because the electrical components in it are so big and it's drawing so much energy. And, we talk about the going green movement, especially with like heaters. And I know that California is trying to ban gas heaters. My problem with that is, and I'm fine with that with cars, with all of it, but my problem with that is that I just basically scoped out work for one of my commercial clients to go to electric heaters, and I had the manufacturer, who was actually Raypak, come in because they were like, hey, like we have our stuff in here, we can show you how to make it better. So they came in and they did a whole presentation, and he was like, all right, you need 3 of these heaters for the pool and 2 of them for the spa. He was like, I need to know how much electrical amp, drawage you could have, from the building, how much we can use. And he told them, this is how much you need. And it was basically like 60 amps or something. Like, it was drawing like 60 per. And those 5 heaters were actually going to draw more than the whole building had.
Wow.
So, it's one thing when you can say, hey, this is a going green movement and it's going to save you money, but it can't be pulling so much electricity that it's actually, more electricity than the building has. Right. And this is a 100-year-old building. Like they're hardwired into everything. Like they have a decent amount of electricity. It's just these small electric heaters are drawing so much amperage and so much voltage that, it just doesn't really make sense to put it in. And then, I have a bunch of them in at like my school systems and stuff that can't use gas heaters because they're, the venting issues. It'll take like 3 days for the pool to heat up. I'm filling one of the pools up now, and my one client is kind of freaking out. He's like, I need it open by Monday. He's like, I need 3 days for it to be heating up, and because with a gas heater, you can, and I always say the difference between a gas heater and an electric heater is, they both will, just like a Ferrari and a Prius, they both will get to 60 miles per hour. One just gets there a hell of a lot quicker, and a gas heater is a Ferrari, right? And it's going to go to, it'll take you from 65 to 95 in, less than half a day. And with an electric heater, it's going to take like multiple days, so it's, again, there's just so many different variables that go into this pool game that we're running here. And again, like I said, it's, electrical safety go.
Among other things.
I just had a cross episode with Peter, and then like basically I just he was like, we tried to do an episode on metric, but he was like, we kept going left. And there's so many different things that have happened over the years, and like I said, we could talk a whole episode on electric safety, but it gets kind of boring, to be honest. So I always tell people, I always tell people, like with the CPO class, like, we're talking about swimming pools for 2 days straight. Like we're trying to make it as interesting as we can. But again, at the end of the day, it's just a hole with water in it, we're just doing a bunch of stuff to it. So, so yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. And that's a good way to end it. Talked about a lot of things today. So, for those of you who it's almost an hour, Steve, we beat our record. If you guys have any horror stories about, not only electrical safety, but everything else that we touched on today, we'd love to hear things like that. I mean, one of the nice things I like to do on Facebook every now and then is that there's a group called Fail Army. And it posts videos of people who are like really screwing up bad. And that they're hysterical. But we'd love to hear stories like that and maybe how you solved the problem or whatnot. But yeah, talk to us, communicate with us. We can be reached at talkingpools@gmail.com. And if we use your story or your answer a question or whatnot, we'll send you a little thank you present. We do appreciate that information. And for Steve and myself and everybody out in California, everybody over here in Maryland, you all have a great week, and we'll be talking at you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.